While the world panics at every market dip, the ultra-wealthy are playing a game of centuries, not cycles. Today, we decode the buy, borrow, die strategy, the mathematical blueprint that allows dynasties to grow their fortune for generations without ever paying a single cent in capital gains tax. To understand why the world's most successful investors never sell, we must first unlearn everything we think we know about money, liquidity, and the nature of ownership. In the realm of the 1%, an asset is not a resource to be spent. It is a permanent engine of power. For most of us, an investment is a bridge to a purchase, a house, a car, a retirement. But for the billionaire class, the investment is the destination itself. This is the story of the infinite game.
Part 1. The friction of the exit. To understand the genius of never selling, we must analyze the devastating impact of friction on wealth. In the world of physics, friction slows down motion and generates heat. In finance, friction takes the form of taxes and transaction costs, and it generates a loss of momentum that can destroy a fortune over decades. Imagine two investors, Investor A and Investor B. Both start with $1 million and achieve a consistent 10% annual return. Investor A is a trader. Every year they sell their positions to realize their 10% gain, pay a 20% capital gains tax, and reinvest the remaining 8% back into the market. Investor B is a holder. They never sell, allowing the full 10% to compound untouched. After 30 years, the difference is staggering. Investor A ends up with roughly $10 million. Investor B, by simply doing nothing and avoiding the friction of taxation, ends up with over $17 million. That $7 million gap is the taxation penalty. The math is clear. The moment you sell, you forfeit the future compounding power of the money you gave to the government. The ultra-wealthy realize that the tax code is not just a set of rules, but a mathematical filter that separates those who build wealth from those who merely manage it. Part 2. The buy phase. The foundation of this strategy is the acquisition of quality productive assets. These are not speculative tokens or depreciating luxury goods. They are assets with intrinsic value that grow faster than inflation. Equities in dominant global corporations, prime real estate in supply-constrained cities, and ownership in private enterprises. The goal of the buy phase is not just to find a winner, but to find a forever asset. Think of Warren Buffett's approach to Coca-Cola or Jeff Bezos' retention of Amazon stock. By never selling, they avoid the reinvestment risk, the danger of selling a great company and being unable to find an equally great one to put the money back into. In the infinite game, time is the greatest leverage. By holding indefinitely, you turn the volatility of the market from a threat into a distraction. Short-term price fluctuations become irrelevant because the exit date is effectively never. Part 3. The borrow phase, the secret engine. This is where the strategy moves from simple long-term investing into the realm of financial engineering. If you never sell your assets, how do you buy a yacht, a mansion, or fund a lifestyle? The answer is asset-backed lending, specifically the use of securities-backed lines of credit, SBLOC, or pledged asset lines, PAL. Instead of selling stock to raise cash, a billionaire goes to a bank like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan and uses their portfolio as collateral for a loan. Let's look at the mechanics. If you have $100 million in stock, a bank may lend you $50 million at an interest rate of, say, 4 or 5%. To the average person, debt sounds risky, but to the ultra-wealthy, this debt is a strategic tool. Why? Because as long as the underlying assets grow at a rate higher than the interest on the loan, say 7% growth versus 4% interest, your net worth continues to increase even while you are spending borrowed money. Furthermore, under current tax law, loan proceeds are not considered income. You can receive $10 million in cash from a loan, spend every cent of it, and owe $0 in income or capital gains tax. You are effectively living off the growth of your assets without ever triggering a taxable event. The interest you pay on the loan is significantly cheaper than the 20% to 37% you would have lost to the IRS if you had sold the shares. This is the mathematical arbitrage of the elite. Part 4. The die phase, the final reset. This brings us to the most controversial and mathematically potent part of the strategy, the step up in basis. In the United States, Internal Revenue Code Section 1014 provides a unique benefit to heirs. When an individual dies and passes their assets to their beneficiaries, the cost basis of those assets is reset to the fair market value at the date of death. Imagine a founder who started a company with a cost basis of near zero. Over 50 years, the stock grows to be worth $10 billion. If they sold that stock during their lifetime, they would owe billions in taxes. However, if they hold those shares until death and pass them to their children, the tax code forgets that $10 billion in gain. To the children, the new cost of the stock is $10 billion. They can sell the stock the next day for $10 billion and pay exactly $0 in capital gains tax. This effectively cleanses the wealth of all historical tax liability. The debt used during the borrow phase is then paid off by the estate, often using life insurance proceeds or a small portion of the now tax-free stepped-up assets. The cycle then begins anew for the next generation. This is how dynasties like the Rockefellers and the Mellons have maintained their status for over a century. They are not just managing money, they are managing a mathematical loop that bypasses the traditional tax system.
Part 5. Risk and the margin call. We must acknowledge that the infinite game is not without peril. The primary risk in the borrow phase is the margin call. If the value of the collateralized assets drops significantly, the bank may demand immediate repayment or seize the assets to cover the loan. This is what happened to many during the 1929 crash, and more recently to certain high-profile tech executives during market downturns. To mitigate this, the 1% maintain conservative loan-to-value ratios. While a bank might allow them to borrow 50% of their portfolio's value, the truly savvy may only borrow 10% or 15%. This provides a massive buffer against market volatility. They also diversify their collateral across different asset classes, real estate, private equity, and blue-chip stocks, to ensure that a crash in one sector doesn't trigger a total liquidation. They are playing a game of survival, and the first rule of survival is to never be forced to sell during a panic. Part 6. The cultural shift. Understanding buy, borrow, die requires a shift in mindset from income to equity. Most people are taught to maximize their salary, which is the most highly taxed form of wealth. The 1% focus on maximizing their equity, which is the most tax-efficient form of wealth. They view the world through the lens of the balance sheet, not the income statement. In the income statement world, you earn, you are taxed, and you spend what is left. In the balance sheet world, you own, you borrow against the growth, and you pass the ownership forward. This is the mathematical secret mentioned in our title. It is the realization that the system is designed to reward capital over labor and permanence over transaction. By refusing to sell, you are refusing to participate in the tax cycle that drains the middle class. You are choosing to keep your capital working for you 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, for decades on end. The infinite game is a rejection of the short-termism that plagues modern society. It is a commitment to the power of compounding and the strategic use of the legal and financial frameworks available to the few. While it requires a significant amount of initial capital to execute perfectly, the principles, avoiding unnecessary friction, focusing on long-term ownership, and understanding the power of debt are lessons that any investor can apply. The 1% never sell because they understand that in the race for generational wealth, the person who moves the least often travels the farthest. They have mastered the art of being still in a world that is constantly moving, and in doing so, they have unlocked the secret to a fortune that never ends.